Welcome everyone. Episode 8 of our Tricks of the Trade podcast. As per usual, I'm Whispyr, Wowhead writer for Assassination, and I'm joined by Seli and Forever Guy. You guys want to say hi real quick?
Hello.
Yo, what's good?
So, it's been a while, but we also don't really actually have that much to talk about, frankly, in terms of things that have happened. So I just want to start off asking you guys how sort of the end of the patch went, the end of the tier. Obviously, we had 10.05. We talked about that a little bit the last podcast. But how do you guys feel it's settled out? What do you guys think about the raid finishing, the nerfs that happened, obviously, all of that fun stuff, end of tier kind of shenanigans?
I'm actually gonna miss Vault. I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna miss Dathia though.
Okay.
But I think overall the rest of the raid was pretty solid and is somewhat fun to re-clear. Then again, I'm mostly just sitting on the boss as assassination, not really getting to do any fun cleave stuff.
Okay. Anything else?
Nah, I mean, how do you feel about the ring? Yeah, that's kind of like the biggest, newest thing, or most recent thing, I guess.
You want the amulet?
Yeah.
Okay, that ring is crazy strong. So Blizzard has said that they don't want that being good next year, right? But
Yep.
even before any of the buffs, it was already better for Outlaw and Subtlety. So my prediction is that they're going to nerf the ring, quote unquote, by reverting it. And if it gets a reversion and it doesn't get like a crazy, like just full on delete the ring, it's still going to be cracked.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because they nerfed Puzzle Box now and Rage Feather, but they haven't addressed the ring yet. I don't know if they're waiting for that for patch notes or even like the very first week of 10.1. I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
I mean, I think it's rough too, because they said that they wanted the ring to be relevant for Frog for like a little bit, but they didn't want it to be Biss.
Yeah.
With how like the crazy swing that we see from spec to spec, like how bad it is for Assassination versus how good it is for Outlaw, makes it really, really difficult for them to find that sweet spot, like raid wide, right? Like if they nuke it into the ground so that it's bad for Outlaw, well then it's actually unplayable for Assassination, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my guess is just it. Like my prediction is it's probably just going to get a small nerf, which means that the specs that were barely using it don't use it anymore, and then all the unplayable meme specs that scale off of flat damage effects, like Sub Rogue, Outlaw Rogue, shit like Windwalker, they're probably still going to be using it for a long time. Is my guess. I wouldn't be surprised if we used it the entire tier of Prague, at the minimum.
It'd be pretty cringe.
Nah, bro, dude, are you telling me you're more excited walking into a raid encounter if your ring just had fucking stupid crit on it? What's crit mastery doing for you, bro?
I mean, I'm more
A lot,
excited.
actually.
Well, I'm more excited to get stuff. Is the thing, like,
Yeah, you'll get stuff in other slots.
But yeah, but I don't know. I hate how locked down slots are, because it feels like I have 4 tier set slots, 2 embellishments, and then like there's always going to be one trinket that you farm out like in 3 days because it's Gigabis, right? So then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, if I have 4 tier 2 embellishments and a trinket and like a crafted weapon, that's like 2/3 of my slots already. And then you throw the ring on top, and I don't know. It's like I go into a patch, and I already know that all my shit's going to be filled in 2 days.
Well, I think that's the that's the quote unquote like downside of making like really strong deterministic crafting and putting it in WoW, is that the end result is that you're going to be having a lot of really strong gear really early on, which obviously comes with its pros and cons, right? Like the pro is that you can kind of finish out your character pretty quickly, and you can go either play an alt, you can play another video game, you can feel like you're not permanently behind because you're missing on Sylvanas Dagger, fucking just random bullshit from the vault. Like it's all like all of the good gear primarily is just from crafting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least when it comes to like weapon, for example, right? Like you don't really have to worry too much about getting a good weapon from the raid, because you always know you have that fallback in the crafting process. I do agree though, like it's something we've had, like an issue we've had since Legion, even I would say, with between tier set or in BFA with Azerite set and then legendaries and some of the expansions, artifact weapons, etc. It feels like a new patch comes out and you think, okay, there's so much cool new loot, and then at the end of the day, you can't actually wear most of it. The one upside that I see with the amulet in particular is just that it probably makes tuning a little bit easier. Because it's just going to be easier for Blizzard to know, okay, what is going to be the performance baseline for most of the specs, and then they can actually tune the new tier a little bit better than the last one. Because let's face it, Vault was not particularly well tuned outside of Diona for whatever reason. That boss was insanely tightly tuned, and it was really, really good. And then everything else needed like a 40% nerf.
Dude, why was Taros so fucked up? That boss was so messed up.
Yeah, it was like early on, every boss since Taros, right? Like, I mean, Senna was kind of, I guess. Bro,
we were like doing like spreadsheets and being like, do we have enough damage to kill Taros week 1? It's like, what the fuck? That boss had a crazy enrage timer.
I think most guilds just straight up skipped it and said, okay, instead of gonna do like heroic and normal full clears for the tier.
Yeah.
And then I mean, this time around, hopefully there won't be as many tuning issues. And I do think that the ring and the like knowing exactly how strong it is for every class right now is definitely going to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally really enjoyed the tuning on Kurog specifically. Like Kurog felt pretty good when my guild stopped trying to 4-heal it. And I really enjoyed that fight just mechanically. It felt like one of the just more thought out fights, but then it just got absolutely cheesed, right? With like trying to pull it in at exactly 97 so that you get both of the ads, but you don't have to deal with the other phase, and then healing through one of them and pulling them to the ice and just skipping. Like, I don't know. It's really weird to me that they never addressed that strat on Kurog where you literally ignore half the sides.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really weird because they managed to nerf everything else, but they didn't manage to get rid of the cheese, right? So I'm hoping that we don't see stuff like that in the next raid, where people go in week 1 and just find a strat that ignores half the mechanics, and now GG, that's how you do the fight the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Like I don't even know what some of the ads on Kurog are doing because you just never see them, right? And that just feels like you're missing part of the boss fight. But I guess maybe that was the intention for guilds to just find out, okay, which are the 2 ads that are dealt with the easiest, and then you play those and you completely ignore the others.
On Prague, you did 3. Like you were in 3 different segments. You only skipped 1, and then the enrage.
Oh yeah, true. I mean, you only skipped the lightning one, and then, but I mean, you didn't really deal with the frost one either, right?
I mean, that's also
you played the mechanics, but you didn't. Okay, you're outlaw. You probably still had Blade Flurry up doing Prague up in last phase.
But... No, bro, you can go check the logs. On God, never press Blade Flurry.
Not once.
We actually wiped. No, straight up, we wiped at 0% because our other rogue was spamming Blade Flurry. No cap. I didn't press it though.
Any log checkers?
I mean, you do a phase, then an intermission, then a phase, then you did an intermission, then you did another phase, and then you enrage. Like you did 3 on Prague. It's just like you got to choose the one you got to skip. And then now that we do so much damage, you can just straight up skip the second intermission. I think that's fine.
I mean,
fuck intermissions, bro. I just want to kill a boss. We clear raid in like 2 hours. It's lit.
Yeah, I mean, we do as well. We cleared in like 3, but it's, I don't know. Like the Giga nerfs are just, they're not it, because I imagine that, like, if I'm not a guild that can CE in like, a month or whatever, right? If it takes a little bit for my guild to prog, then it sort of feels bad getting to a boss and like the next week you wake up and the ads are cut in like the health of the ads is in like cut by 30%. You're like, what the fuck's going on? Why am I like?
Well, what's the solution then? If you have you have new players in new guilds where like they don't have the same level of like output as like like the sim DPS and blah blah blah. Like they're like high blue, low, like anywhere from green to blue to purple parsing on these bosses. How are they supposed to kill Kieran when we're hitting fucking enrage on Prague when we have like the best gear we possibly can, we're all cracked out of our mind, and we're hitting enrage. Like what are noobs supposed to do that don't spend all fucking day playing World of Warcraft, right? Like what else do you do?
I don't know. Like that, it's really rough. I'm not saying I have a solution to that, but like my guild personally, we got ahead of the storm a little bit. So like we would be either at the end of Prague on a boss, or we would be like moving on to the next boss when the nerfs came in. And so we'd like finish our week, right? And we wake up on Tuesday and it would be like, oh great, now on re-clear this boss is just dead.
Hell yeah, brother.
Which like is fine because we're like riding that wave where like re-clear is becoming really easy because we show up and the re-clear is just free, right?
Hell yeah, brother.
But I don't know, if we were just a little bit slower, like if we were 1 week slower, then we'd be sitting there halfway through Prague on a boss and they'd nuke the shit out of it, which I imagine doesn't feel great. I've been on that side before, but I don't have a solution to that. Like, you either power creep the gear, which is like not a solution, right? Because
which they did with the amulet, by the way. That's literally what the amulet is.
Sure, but like you see how terribly implemented that is, where it was like 0.5% for assassination and 8% for outlaw. Like,
yeah, but then it got buffed. Whoa! What do you expect every single spec and class to scale with like damage procs in the same way, right?
I mean, I expect it to be at least comparable.
But like how? There's too many moving parts in specs, right? Like how is a damage proc supposed to be of equal value for assassination and outlaw when outlaw gets 20% flat crit baseline on all of its abilities, and then they have a talent that gives them a 10% damage amp, again global on everything. Like how are you supposed to make it so that those are worth like 8% each, right? It's just not possible.
I mean, don't make them global.
No, what? Yeah, just nerf outlaw for fun.
Yeah. That's always the answer. The answer is always nerf outlaw.
Different specs scale off of different things, right? Like Whetstone isn't the best. Wait, is that a strength trinket or is it only agi?
That's strength. Yeah, it's both.
Yeah, like DKs can equip it. Like Whetstone is poo poo for Unholy DK, right? And the puzzle box is poo poo for Outlaw. Like you can't just have like damage procs, damage on use, crit, mastery trinkets, and you expect them all to be the same for every spec, right? Like all the specs have too many moving parts that like.
I think the core flaw in the design for the amulet is that it was just damage procs. If you have like 25 different options and like 5 of those are for heal and they're all shit, and some of them are for survivability, which is nice. If you were able to just switch them easily instead of having to go back to the fucking anvil every time, then it would have been fine. If some of those, like there was nothing stopping them from just adding 4 stones for one of the secondary stats each. And then you can just pick the stat proc that you want. But instead it was just limited to all damage procs, and obviously some classes scale really well with that. And then you have a class like Mage, where the ring was like even like fully maxed, and after the buffs it was equivalent to like a 450 eye level stat ring or something.
Okay, but if you make it
a 350 eye level stat ring, like
yeah, but if you make the ring a stat proc, then you have the problem in the inverse, where certain specs like assassination gain more value from it than outlaw.
I mean, sure, but outlaw can still get the 8% from the damage procs, and assassination could pick the stat proc, right?
Oh, you're saying in addition? I mean, sure, man.
Yeah. I mean, when you have this many choices with the stones, right? I just felt like it was a missed opportunity to just add some stat procs there as well, or something that would close the gap between the specs that really scale really well with like just the flat damage procs versus those that really just don't want those whatsoever.
Yeah, maybe they just wanted to make something that's only good for outlaw players. You ever think about that? They saw, no, you know what? We're sorry. We're sorry we nerfed you 8 times. Sorry we nerfed you 8 times here to pay compensation similar to the hunter nerfs. We're gonna give you the amulet. This one's yours. Okay, maybe that's what happened.
Is having the entire right side of the class tree not good enough for you?
Yeah, the entire right. That's all mine. I love Shadow Dance.
Like I was talking about 8 nerfs when it was like 3.
3, 8, whatever. They're kind of similar. I feel like if it was 8, if I was to count it, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's some weird math, but I'll believe you. So obviously, raid over, PTR testing happens, new raid, new M+, all that fun stuff. Melee's
really
looking
excited.
I mean, I am excited for them to fix Melee because right now, if you're not named Rhett, you're in the dirt, right? And like we saw huge mage nerfs, so I may be huffing the copium. Rogue next week, yeah, Rogue next week.
So
same stuff.
Here's the thing, right? Melee is bad because of tuning, and then it's also bad because all the fights are bad for Melee. But they can very easily fix this, okay? So on Painsmith, on testing, that, you know, like the axe mechanic that Painsmith gave you, that used to work on Melee in testing. And then they were like, wait a minute, this is really stupid. Let's make it so it's only ranged. So a lot of mechanics like that are probably going to be like that, is my guess. Like the Rathian mechanic where you have to go LOS, that's probably going to be a wizard only mechanic, is my guess, for example. Or that boss with all the stupid like the fire traps and the robots that spawn, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, that boss. Melee's probably getting no mechanics on that fight, straight up. I'm pretty sure no mechanics. And then at that point, Melee gets full uptime, but they still don't do damage compared to like a Frost Wizard, okay?
You know, is that the solution though?
What,
for Melee to just not get mechanics?
I mean, when you make mechanics usually, yeah, that's usually how you make Melee good, is you just give it no mechanics, and then it just gets to hit the boss endlessly for fun. And then, like, downtime just hurts wizards more when they're only getting mechanics, right?
Yeah, basically what I'm getting at is that actually enjoyable gameplay when the way that you become viable is that you just hit the boss for 8 minutes straight and don't have to worry about anything. It feels kind of like Whispyr said, like they need to find a way to make Melee engaging and perform well without having to resort to either aura buffs or just making it not need to move away from the boss like ever.
I mean, hitting the boss for 8 minutes straight, that's what we did in Vault, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And it's not particularly fun. It reminds me of like Blockade in BOD, where, you know, like ranged had to do all the fun mechanics and you just sidestepped every 15 seconds, and that was the fight for you.
Hold on, what mechanics in Vault are Melee not getting?
I mean, if you're talking about like assassination, obviously, or then you're sitting on boss on Diona, for example, so you basically don't get any mechanics whatsoever throughout the entire fight, other than having to kite a laser, maybe. On Korok, you don't have to soak anything.
I had to soak shit on Prog. I had cloak, bro.
Wow, but you're still hitting the boss while you're doing that. No,
first of all, no, I did not. Second of all, I'm just attacking the phrase that says that Melee gets no mechanics in Vault. That's just not true. There's just like Vault is just not a lot of mechanics going on. Okay, like what mechanics are on Taros that Melee gets, or that range gets that Melee doesn't? Nothing, right?
I mean,
what's on Senna? What's on Dathia? What's on
around it that Melee just like insta clears their debuffs, right? On Senna, you don't really have to worry about the webs at all. On an Arazagev in particular, like range definitely get more bombs than Melee do. Melee don't get the spread mechanic in first intermission at all.
Which bombs?
The stuff that you have to run out, like the fall of damage.
You used to on Prog. You 100% did.
I mean, you get them, but you don't get them nearly as often as range. There was definitely something that prioritized ranged over Melee there. Sure. And same with like some other mechanics in that fight. Overall, it's just, I mean, Vault wasn't a very mechanic-heavy raid anyway, I feel. It was mostly a throughput tier and not a mechanics tier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, the moment we step back into a mechanics tier, Melee is just going to get fucked. And usually Blizzard's solution is to just have Melee not get mechanics. And for me personally, that's just not that enjoyable anymore.
Well, it's also the problem of like, so here's what happened, okay? The raid launched, okay? I'm gonna tell a tale, and this is a real tale, okay? This is a real story. So what happened was the raid came out, and Melee was cracked, okay? all 3 rogue specs were super fucked up. You know, warrior was super strong, but then somehow got buffed. You know, demon hunter was good. You know, what other melees? Enhance was good, right? Like all these melee specs, they were living their best lives, okay? But then what happened is they saw not enough wizards on top. So mage, you know, 10% random buff for fun. You know, hunter, you know, it's already the best spec in the game. Let's just give it like a 10% buff. And then, you know, we're gonna nerf the bow, but then you're gonna gain more damage. Like, so every single melee spec that was, you know, living their best life only got nerfed, and then every single range spec and every other spec in the entire game just got like a 10 to 15% buff, right? So we're going into this next tier where every single range spec basically got an undeserved buff, and now we're going into a tier where melee is just fucked, right? Because also the mechanics are bad. So it's like, it's over. But it can be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's already kind of benefiting us, I think, is that it's mostly a single target heavy tier, whereas I felt like Vault was very cleave heavy, all things considered.
On prog, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, on prog. Like when you went into reclear, or even just like coming into the boss a little bit later after some wave of nerfs, the requirement for just having cleave on top of strong single target damage to not hit enrage on most of the encounters was definitely still there, but it was also gone very, very fast.
Oh, I mean, like now specifically, it's like the entire raid is single target. It's like, yeah, on Senarth, bro, I'm playing single target build, and like Kurog, I basically just play single target build because there's no point. Because like,
yeah,
you know, Destra Warlocks.
And I think that kind of benefits most of the melee classes somewhat, except for Windwalker. But at this point, I don't even know if I want to call Windwalker a melee class anymore. It's just in a different league entirely.
Yeah, so it's just mega unplayable. It's worse than Rogue somehow.
I mean, the question is, like, how fast do you think they're going to fix it? Like, how fast do you think they're going to fix the tuning? Is it going to be week 1 we see
when
a
did we have
giga patch?
not the first wave of nerfs, but the first wave of buffs in Vault? I think that's a kind of a good indicator. I think it was like week 4, week 5-ish, when they started buffing like mages and warlocks.
So you think it's gonna be week 4, week 5 until we see big melee buffs, but not week 1?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they take the same approach of like first 2 weeks, they're going to nerf the overperformers. And then once they have a little bit more data on like which classes actually need a buff, in terms of like an aura buff or something, then they'll start moving those up. And I wouldn't be surprised if we are one of the recipients of those, if we are not performing well. So everybody play really bad so we get buff, please, thanks.
Bro, I'm telling you, you just have to do what DKs do, bro. I don't even... Dude, this class does so much damage, and then it gets buffed somehow. Can you guys actually explain to me how Unholy DK got an 8% buff last week? How? How did that happen?
Because they know that the class is going to be absolutely gutted the moment they have to exchange their tier set, and they have to replace
I don't believe
their puzzle box, and are probably no longer receiving PI anymore either.
Listen, okay? I know nothing about DK, okay? Straight up, I know nothing, okay? I play Rogue, I play Demon Hunter, I sprinkle a little bit in Paladin now because everybody does. But I actually just don't believe when an Unholy DK says to me that their tier set is so bad that they loot. Like, do you see how much damage they're doing right now? By the way,
it's not about their tier set, their new tier set being bad. It's more about how broken the current one is. I think it's like 20 or around 20% of their DPS comes from the tier set by itself. So even if you go down to a like decent or even like slightly below average tier set of the next one being like 5%, that's just a massive DPS loss. So I can definitely understand the concern there.
Well, Push is saying that the current tier set is 12 and that their new is 9. This is what I mean. Okay, so I don't know anything. Okay, like I said, I can't even trust DK players because DK players just lie. Okay, I was told that Unholy DK was playable, like unplayable, like a few weeks ago, and then suddenly I go to Taros and every single top damage is a DK with no PI somehow. Apparently they also need PI to do damage, but I don't know, bro. Unholy DK classes like this, they just don't make sense to me. But if listen, okay, here's what you need to be positive, okay? If a class like Unholy DK and Hunter can get buffs, even Rogue can get buffs, okay? That's what we need to keep that in mind.
Have you been playing the same game over the last 5 years?
Yeah, Rogue's been fucked up. Most of World of Warcraft's history, Rogue's been fucked up, okay? We gotta be honest, okay? We gotta be honest with ourselves. We've had like one bad tier, okay? We've had one bad tier in the past.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the important takeaway. Like, we've seen a lot of dooming in the spec channels and all across the Discord, really. But I do think that even if we don't get any changes whatsoever, I don't even think that Rogue is going to be that bad. it's the same situation ultimately that we were in throughout most of Shadowlands as well, where either one or multiple of the rogue specs weren't that great. So even if you're one-tricking one spec, I think you'll still be able to perform pretty decently. We still have good survivability. And at the end of the day, you don't have to perform as good as the best mage in your raid, or the best warlock in your raid, or the best hunter. You just have to perform better than like your second or third best player on that spot. And it's times like these where you just got to focus on other skills. I mean, obviously tuning will always be up to Blizzard, but I feel if people just focus on, preparing well for the new raid tier, having fewer mistakes than their fellow raid members, then they'll always have a raid spot as well, even if the class itself may not be performing well. And then if, big if, but if we get some buffs, then we're going to fly in the next year, I think.
The other thing is, people think atrophic poison is like actually like good and like valuable. So like, even though like it's actually just like, it may just be that rogue's unplayable, people have tricked themselves into thinking that atrophic poison is useful. So you get a raid spot no matter what. So I mean, it's kind of just a W no matter what.
Weirdly enough, most uninformed raid leaders actually think so. So that might actually play in our favor for once.
That's all, you think I'm lying when I'm saying this, dude? People think that's like a useful talent. It's fine. Don't worry. People can believe
that's what I mean. Like
okay?
it's useful for like the top 5 guilds, right? Where adding a little bit of mitigation is actually important to making the HPS checks and being able to live through certain mechanics. But like outside of the race for world first, like stuff like devotion aura, stuff like
I've heard people compare it to dev aura, and that just makes me laugh because that just means I get a raid spot because
yeah.
Like whatever, bro. I'll take the free raid spot.
Do you guys think that like a lot of our tuning also is because of like this perception that atrophic is good and rogue being good in PvP that's sort of hindering it, or do you think that it's just completely separate from that and it's just damage bad?
I think it's separate from that, and I think it's completely connected to the fact that rogue has never not been a top tier spec for Mythic Plus. The only time I remember where rogue was like actually like not wanted in Mythic Plus, and even then it was still performing really well, it's just it wasn't like the meta, was like late stage Legion, when people were playing like Boomy Warlock, Windwalker instead. But even then rogue was performing well, and then I mean, as long as rogue is not just playable but like an easy S tier pick for Mythic Plus, I don't think we can realistically expect any PvE buffs, honestly. I think we need to be bad at Mythic Plus first for us to really, like for someone to say, oh yeah, this class actually needs something to push it up a little bit. But why would they buff Rogue when we're still like outperforming almost every other spec in one of the 2 major PvE content types?
Okay, here's the thing, right? I've said this for unironically like years now. Rogue is actually just overrated in Mythic Plus, bro. Every single time I look at the leaderboards at the end of the season, it's like 50% rogue. But like, it's like, let me look right now, okay? Number 1, 2, and 3 is the same group. It's a rogue. 4 and 5 is no rogue. 6 and 7 is the same group as the first 3, and they're playing a rogue. 8, 9, and 10, no rogue. 11 is the same group. They're playing rogue. Like, rogue is good, but I feel like the reason rogue is played in Mythic Plus so often is just because like the good players play rogue. But like, I'm looking at these leaderboards and I'm seeing like Windwalker Enhanced Destro. I'm seeing Shadow Havoc Fire. I'm seeing Windwalker Enhanced Destro. Like Rogue is obviously good. Like, I'm not delusional. I'm like, oh, Rogue is bad. But people act like Rogue is this like SS, Omega, mega powerful spec. But it's like, usually it's just like, there's a lot of good players that play Rogue. And then, a lot of good players tend to push keys. And then that's just how it is, right? But I mean, if you actually look at the the stuff right now, it's like 50% rogue, and then in MDI, rogue never gets played, because it's just like rogue is bad in an MDI setting, and then same goes for Great Push. It's like not always rogue, right? Rogue is like a super overvalued spec in Mythic Plus IMO, and then I don't know. In raid, it's like okay usually.
I think it's just a very safe class to play in Mythic Plus, right? Like you never have to worry about, okay, is this new Phantom class, like this new player on a Phantom class, is he actually going to perform well? Is he not just going to do good damage, but actually know how to play in Plus? Meanwhile, Rogue has been consistently up there, maybe not like the very best, right? But it's been up there for such a long time that you can reasonably expect any Rogue player to know what they're doing. And I do think that correlates somewhat with them just not wanting to buff our AoE, for example. or just being very careful about giving us any sort of buffs. Because I mean, I do think that the PvP thing plays into it somewhat.
I don't.
But that's mostly a community perception thing where everybody hates rogues simply because they get, at some point in their life, they got stunlocked and killed without being able to do anything about it by a rogue from stealth. And since that point, they hate rogue with passion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Rogue is just, I don't know. I feel like, okay, here's what WoW actually needs, okay? We need Mythic plus solo queue because people are such meta cucks, okay? Meta cuckery is ruining this game. I've been saying this for years, okay? The fact that like people have this mentality where you're going into Group Finder and they're like, we're doing like a 22 Shadow Moon Burial Ground, need Rogue, Mage, like, dude, like that is like, is that not just like insane? Like how does that happen? Like how does that happen at the 22 level? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit weird, although I think that this season in particular was one of the most well-balanced seasons when it comes to overall viability of classes and specs. I think just comparing it to Shadowlands and previous expansions as well, you can play almost everything right now, up to like a very, very high level. And I do think that players overall have picked up on it, and the leaderboards at the very top may not reflect it. But I think once you're comparing like the overall representation versus like how many people are playing a class versus how well is it represented in like 20 plus keys, I think it's almost the same ratio for every class there, because people don't really struggle with getting invited anymore, because almost every class can perform really, really well in Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of that is just that, like, when they were tuning to plus 15 and people were doing 27s, right? Like, they weren't tuning for stuff that high, but now they tune to 20s, so the floor has kind of come up in terms of like the level that they tune to, which means that now, like, instead of a 15 to a 27, it's like a 20 to 28, right?
Yeah.
So I think the tuning in general has just gotten a little bit more accurate for the higher end, which is why it's such a diverse M+ season.
I just think I think the balance has been the exact same. I think just people are finally waking up. Okay, they're waking up to reality that you don't need to bring you saw what JPC and you need to be JPC Junior. Like I feel like the mentality has just shifted, but I don't know. I feel like the balance feels pretty similar, at least IMO.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
So, what about them tier sets though?
Bro, I don't even know, bro. I don't even want to talk about it because I'm just gonna be a negative Norman. It's just like, it doesn't make some sense to me. Okay, you have an Outlaw Rogue tier set that is doing 6 times the intended damage. Obviously, that's a bug. You then nerf the 4-piece without fixing the bug, and then in addition, the 4-piece is a DPS loss. So they took the 4-piece that was a DPS loss to equip, they nerfed it, and then they nerfed the 2-piece, and they bug fixed the 2-piece. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, doesn't make any sense.
Is that just like numerically, or do you also feel like that's a bit of an overall design issue where you needed someone to spend like half a year testing shit on PTR to even figure out how it works?
I mean, I don't care about having to fucking test shit on PTR, man. That's just that's the cost of being a theory crafter, bro. You just gotta get in the forge and start theory crafting. You know, hitting iron. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. When it comes to assassination, obviously, tier set, I'd rather not want to talk about it.
Facts.
Simply because everything about this set bonus doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I mean, what is there to say? We have a heavy push for Garrote for multiple expansions now, even, and then it's not in the set bonus. And then, when we get more cooldowns that we can sync together with one another, and then we get a tier set that makes us want to not do that somehow, but obviously we still do. So the set bonus isn't really all that good. So I'm like, okay, I don't really understand the design philosophy, not even like on a numerical level, right? Just on overall, like who came up with it, and why does it just not fit the overall playstyle of the spec? And I'm not sure about subtlety, but I think it's somewhat similar there. Where I mean, it's not pushing the already good build. It's trying to force a little bit of diversity there, I guess, but it's not really being very successful at it due to how bad the left side talents still are for sub. So I think it's overall, I think I was expecting more after the first tier was proclaimed as being, somewhat bare bones and not supposed to be very powerful because they wanted to see, okay, what's the overall performance of the specs before they go a little bit more, before they go with more complex set bonuses. And I mean, if this is it, then I'm just unfortunately pretty disappointed.
I mean, from the assassination side, the amount of times, it is insane to me, the amount of times that people have been like, oh, well, it's a global nature buff, so does that make Kingsbane good again? And I'm like, okay, but you cast Kingsbane during Deathmark when you don't have it, and then the buff lasts 30 seconds, and Kingsbane is a minute, so it doesn't hit the next Kingsbane either.
Yeah.
Why is this good for Kingsbane? And they're like, ooh.
Bro, that's just the cost of doing business, bro. As a well endowed Discord moderator, okay. People see the text on the item and they don't think about it, okay. They just see the text and they're thinking, okay. It's like the Greenskin Wicker where people are like, the tier set makes you press between the eyes. It's like, oh, dude, Greenskin Wicker. That's like you play Greenskin Wicker with the tier set, duh. And it's like, well, no. But I like where your head's at. It's just I mean, WoW is a hard game, okay? So
I don't know. It's so this tier has been really bad just from a PTR standpoint to people reading the bonus and just not getting it, right? And so if I need to be the one explaining how stuff works, or Zach needs to be, in the slums hashing out how the outlaw tier works because nobody understands what's happening. That feels like it's just not implemented properly, right?
It's not just a community thing, right? It's definitely a design issue in my opinion, where it's the tooltip's already very, very bogus. We went from having a trinket in Shadowlands that literally just had 3 question marks as its tooltip, to tooltips that read a certain way, but then when you get into it, you realize, okay, it's not actually doing those things. But it's Night Stalker. You think that Night Stalker actually improves your damage from stealth, but I mean, we all know how that went. To just reading certain tooltips, and you read the tooltip and obviously you make a connection in your mind to how that might affect the overall gameplay of the spec, but it just doesn't. And while I can definitely understand why people are having these ideas and these questions, because it almost seems like this was the intention of the devs as well, right? If they make a BTE heavy tier set, then it seems like they want you to go down a line into talent trees that further pushes anything that has to do with that ability. But then at the end of the day, you don't, and that just makes it seem very odd, I feel, where either it's just not tuned correctly, or where the tooltip is just not as good.
Okay, well, I think having not obvious answers to stuff is fine though, right? I think it's fine that it's not just between the eyes tier set, between the eyes talent, boom boom boom, just click all the between the eyes trees on the node. I feel like WoW is never going to be a simple game, right? It's always going to be somewhat confusing.
Yeah, but their design goal was to not require Simcraft to figure out what is good and what is powerful to play. And I feel like we're moving away from that more and more. I feel that at the end of the day, Shadowlands was more intuitive to play and to pick talents in, and all your rental power to get all of that together into a cohesive unit that allowed you to do good damage, even without ever engaging with simming. And I feel like we're moving away from that 100%. The Annulet is obviously one of those reasons where no person is realistically going to figure out what or which of those stones are good, and which ones are kind of shit. without Simcraft, and I think that some of the new tier sets are falling into that same direction.
I mean, it's worse than that though, right? Because it's not only you get a tier set, and like for Guy's example, right? Like if there's a between the eyes tier set, and you have to put it in, and then it's like, oh well, just pick all the between the eyes talents. It's one step deeper than that though, because what's happening now with the outlaw tier set is like, oh, it's a between the eyes tier set, but we have no idea how this shit works. Like, what is happening? Right? You got to go on PTR, and it's worse than just theory crafting a new build or simming like all your talent combinations again to make sure you didn't miss anything. But it's also now you have to do a ton of work just to figure out what it does. Like
that's due to so many server-side scripts now happening, right? With some of these mechanics, where it's not just like information you can just pass from the spell data, but it's like server-side scripts that you have no idea how they work. So you actually have to go into the game to figure out how they interact with one another, and then find a way to actually implement it into Simcraft, which is obviously not as easy as just taking the spell info.
Yeah, okay, it's 2 layers deep.
Let me tell you how I think of the game, and you tell me if I'm dumb. Okay, here's how I think of the game. Okay,
you're dumb.
You play out
the tier sets. The tier sets to me. Here's how they read. Okay. % increased damage. I don't care about the functionality. I don't care about how, like, does it scale with armor? Does it do true damage? Does it, like, genuinely, I don't give a fuck. It could be in the worst functionality possible. At the end of the day, all the tier set is doing, it's giving me flat damage, right? And then I'm just gonna go to I'm gonna go to raid bots. I'm gonna find the best talent combination that, with however it's chosen to be coded, it's going to give me the most damage. That's all I care about. So, like, sure, it's pretty, like, dumb that, like, to find the specific ways that it interacts and, like, how the actual thing functions, the way we have to actually figure out is, like, literally go into a fucking PTR and just dummy test and then bug report and then, see what they do and don't fix. Like, sure, that's a little lame, but it's also, like, realistically, does it matter how it functions? Like, does it matter how the Outlaw 2 set functions?
I mean, kind of, yeah. Like,
how? Wait, how? Explain to me how knowing whether or not it scales with like armor matters.
Well, I'm not talking like specifically right now, like the 2 set bonus for Outlaw in 10-1, right?
Well, but that's what I'm specifically talking about.
Yeah, but in general, like, you got to know how this shit interacts and how it all works, because if you don't, then you can't. Because then you can't theory craft it. Like, if
you can.
I mean, you can't theory craft it. You can feely craft it at that point, but you can't theory craft it. It's just.
I mean, you said you're gonna plug it into raid bots, or you're gonna hit all your talents, and it's gonna tell you how to play it. But like, somebody's got to tell raid bots how to play.
Yeah, that's their job. That's not my job.
Well, yeah, but it sucks. Like,
but that's the hard part right now, because
it has gotten
progressively harder to get that information implemented into raid bots.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like the issue that I have personally is that, like what I said earlier, it's sure there might be some specs or some bonuses, like you said, where it's just you just press the button that glows, and then it's gonna work out some way. Maybe you perform 2% lower than if you played it like super optimally. But when you have a set bonus like assassination compared to just outlaw, right? Like outlaw is a stat gain, and it's just something that happens while you're already doing your rotational prior. But when you're looking into lining up cooldowns and stuff, and potentially delaying cooldowns, you want to figure out, okay, is it now worth to hold on to a second shift charge to overlap it with the nature damage bonus after deathmark, etc. You need to be able to figure that stuff out. It's not intuitive based off of the tooltip of the set bonus, and it's difficult to really get it implemented as well. So that just makes things worse for the regular player. At the end of the day, you got to keep in mind that all of us, probably most of the people listening to this as well, are advanced players, right? And at the end of the day, the game is designed not for us. It's designed for people with like a lower level of knowledge. And is it going to be intuitive? Are they going to make the right or the wrong choices based off of how the tooltip reads? And I think that this tier, definitely, people will definitely make wrong talent choices and wrong gameplay choices simply because they think the tier set works in a certain way, but it doesn't.
Well, Blizzard has also said that they're like fine with you making shit talent trees. Like if you're just a noob and you're just picking random talents, they're fine with Like they don't care. Like if you're gonna just like make noob talent trees, then that's on you, dog.
Yeah, but it's one thing if you make a bad talent tree based on all the information that is presented to you. It's another thing if that information that is being presented to you is just flat out false. Like in the case of, certain skills just not working with lethality or Night Stalker. You make the assumption that, oh yeah, now all my skills are doing more damage. If I cast a Rupture from stealth with Night Stalker, it's going to take the full damage for the entire duration because that's how it has worked for 15 years, and now it doesn't. And you don't know. We know because you figured out in the tier.
What does that have to do with armor and the tier set? I'm talking about the tier set.
Not with the tier set in general. I'm talking that the tier set are just continuing this trend of tooltips just being less informative and less correct. And I think that overall, at least they said that this is not the direction they want the game to take. They want people to be less reliant on raid bots and not more. And I feel like we're getting more and more reliant on it.
Sure.
Which then makes it worse because if something is not implemented into raid bots correctly or into Simcraft correctly, then we can't find out either, right? We can't inform people, us as guide writers and content creators, etc. We can't inform people on what's the best way to play because we don't know.
Yeah, but that doesn't bother Guy because he's just gonna copy paste the WoW talents anyways.
He just presses the button,
facts, bro.
He does,
the fuck? I mean in the sense of like knowing whether or not your tier set interacts with like a certain talent that's not good anyway. Like specifically like the greenskin wicker thing. It's like, okay, the 4 set is you cast between the eyes, you gain agility and you do some fucking damage. And then people are like, oh, we should play greenskin wicker. It's like, sure, you're making that connection in your head that like between the eyes equals between the eyes equal good. But it's like at that point you're just making the mistake in like misunderstanding, what makes the tier set good and like what makes between the eyes bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're just
it goes both ways, right? Obviously, people come to conclusions way too quickly without really thinking things through. But then the question is, do we have the tools available to inform and correct that misinformation? Maybe someone streams it, maybe someone talks about it. Oh yeah, this is a BTE set bonus. Let's just go, everybody go greenskin wickers, and then you're gonna spend the next 2 months correcting that information because that streamer happens to have 5,000 viewers. Is that something you necessarily want? I don't think so. Hey, bro, I remember how mad you were at me for playing Vigor and Mythic Plus and Shadowlands.
What I've learned in my old age that, my old age of 23, turning on 24, I've learned that, you know what? You're not going to convince everybody, okay? Some people are just destined to be noobs, okay? And that's life, okay? I'll put my information out there. If people are, if people want to listen, they can. If they don't want to, then, hey, what can you do, Shrug your shoulders. That's life.
Kind of deep.
Yeah, man.
But only kinda.
Yeah, that's the wisdom you get from...
It's like, bro, we put so much information out there in terms of like the guys, the fucking Discord and shit. If people don't want to use it, sure, dog, whatever. I'll use it. I'll be good at the game. People who use it can also be good at the game. But hey, bro, CBA convincing people that don't want to be known.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. But I guess we'll see just, how the tier ends up, how the tier sets end up getting bug fixed for the 15th time.
Maybe the fact that this time around, for the first time in a long time, we don't actually know as much as we would like to, and we weren't able to test as much as we would have liked to.
Yeah.
And we aren't able to inform the community as much as we would like to play well, might actually play in our favor in terms of our overall performance. Because I do, like we talked about this once or twice, where we said that one of the reasons we feel like we were unfairly targeted, like for the first wave of nerfs in Dragonflight, was because of how well informed the rogue community was as a whole. And obviously that meant that they performed better than people who barely got a working APL together like a week before the raid came out. While we were prepared since beta. And maybe this time around, us not being as prepared as we would like to is going to be a little bit of an uneasy feeling for all of us. But hey, maybe that'll lead to us playing like shit and getting a buff.
Facts, bro. Everybody sandbag. Quick, don't put enchants on next tier. No enchants, no consumables. It's a DPS game. It's a DPS game to put no embellishments on, nothing. Okay.
Yeah. We'll see how it works out. I mean, we don't really have a
Off the
choice in it
rocker.
anyway.
Yeah, facts, man. I mean, here's what I'll say. Okay, I've been pretty negative because my goal is to inform people, not convince people. So I'm just informing people that Rogue doesn't look so good right now. Realistically, you make it so melee gets no mechanics. You actually nerf all the overtuned range specs, which I'll go ahead and list. Okay, Devastation Evoker, Elemental Shaman, Fire Mage, Frost Mage, Destro Warlock, Demonology Warlock, MM Hunter, BM Hunter, Shadow Priest, and I'm pretty sure DK's fucked up, but I haven't seen one. Ret is super overrated though, by the way, but it's gonna be nutty on Prog. Like, I'm just naming every range spec. Yeah, the only one I didn't name is AF because AF kind of sucks. But like every other and Arcane, every other range spec is broken though, straight up. And then here's the thing about Red, okay? Yeah, I know Arcane just got buffed, but Arcane sucks. It's bad. It's so bad. Arcane sucks because it has no defensives. So you play Fire instead. But yeah, Ret is like a little overrated. But the thing about Ret, okay, here's the OP thing about Ret, is that Wings on Prog is the best passive in the entire game. So they'll be really good on like week 1 and 2, and then they're gonna fall off. There's my prediction.
Yeah, I think I somewhat agree. I don't think that if like 10 classes are broken, then I feel like none of them are broken. Then the classes that aren't performing at that level are the ones that actually need some attention. But I think that no matter what, Rogue will be good simply because Rogue has always been a good progression spec. Having a cheat is nice. Having feint is very nice. And it's a single target heavy tier, which is something all 3 specs are doing reasonably well at, maybe barely average overall single target DPS. But we are one of the few classes, especially melee classes, that can usually get all of that out onto the boss without having to worry about needing a combat rest every second progress pull.
Yeah, I think
at the end of the day, you still bring like 3, 4, not 3, 4, like you still bring 5 or 6 melee, and I would argue that for every raid guild out there, Rogue will be one of those 5 or 6 players.
How many Balance Druid did you guys play on Prog?
2, because we had to.
Yep. Okay. And then so here's the thing about Rogue. Okay, Rogue is like Balance Druid, where Balance Druid is sometimes unplayable. Like this tier, Balance Druid is balls. But you know what Balance Druid is really good at? It's really good at progression because it's immune to death. It has Roar, it has Innervate, and it does good enough damage. And that's all you need to be good on Prog. You need to be tanky as fuck. You need to do good enough damage. It needs some stupid utility. And Rogue has all of those. It has Atrophic Poison, which is overvalued. If you die on Prog as a Rogue, you're just a noob. So, just stop being a noob and you're immune to death. And then you're probably going to do good enough damage. So, I mean, Rogue has a raid spot no matter what, even if it does suck, at least one. So, I mean, I'm a pretty doomer on Rogue overall, but I mean, you just get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, just don't be bad.
Enough. Yeah, literally just don't be a noob. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, this patch is looking, the Doom is obviously strong for this patch, but I think that in general we're gonna be fine, right?
Yeah, we've been here before, right? Like this is not a new environment to be in as a Rogue player. This is something we experience, I would argue, maybe every second tier. I didn't feel particularly hyped about Rogue coming into progression in any of the Shadowlands tiers. And we still performed reasonably well in all of those.
I don't know about that. I think Rogue had a really good run in Shadowlands. Fucking Sanctum, all 3 Rogue specs, and then Sepulcher. Sub Rogue was nutty, and then Outlaw was nutty when it got buffed.
By the way, if you guys have questions, put them in the podcast questions channel. We're gonna be wrapping it up and doing a question soon.
Facts.
But okay, prediction time though. Race to world first. Who's gonna take it?
Probably the team that always wins it.
Real.
Yeah.
Depends on how well they're tuning.
There's gonna be another situation where like Limit gets stuck on a boss for a day and a half.
No, we might actually, for the first time in a long time, or for the first time ever, actually, we might run into a situation where the time difference decides the race, even. depending on how well it's tuned, just having those it's what 12 hours now advantage. The reclear might actually come into play. All the guilds are playing with new tanks, which is kind of interesting. But I think Echo has the most reliable or most experienced replacement for theirs. So I would definitely give them the edge overall.
Wait, hold on. Didn't Rogue only get nutty with the edge last minute shard buffs? No, Rogue was insane in Sanctum. Sub was the best spec. And then they buffed Frost. And then Rogue became insane. Like Sub was already like the best spec with the Shadow Gem. Or no, did you go the Blood Gem? I forget. Anyway, you went one of the shittier gems, and then they buffed Frost, and then it was a Rogue sweep. After that, it was over. It was fully Jover, and Rogue was just the best spec class in the entire game. Rogue was so broken in Sanctum.
Just reading over some questions. There's a lot of like, oh well, what's the best Rogue spec? Like, is this doing more single target? That's not really what we're gonna talk about.
I don't mind talking about that because I kind of know. So
I mean, it's just outlaw. It's always outlaw.
Hey! No, listen. It's between outlaw and subtlety. I think you probably play subtlety on the AoE boss because subtlety just does really dumb AoE with fucking black powder, bro. That thing is so fucked up. But yeah, like, so the thing, like, there's this really common misconception people have where they go to Vault of the Incarnates, they go to ranking, and then they go to damage by boss, and then they're like, holy, Assassination Rogue? It does so much single target, but it actually doesn't. It's because bosses like Diurna exist, which really inflate the average, because you're never going to send an Assassination Rogue to the ads in Diurna, so it's always going to be hitting the boss, right? Which naturally inflates the statistics. But if you go to Teros, the best rogue spec is Outlaw, and then like slightly behind Subtlety. If you play single target build on Outlaw, you actually do a lot of fucking single target. And if you're just forced to play single target build on every fight, you probably just play Outlaw, or you just play Subtlety. I think both are like on a razor's edge right now in terms of like which one you can play. I think it's like the exact same as I think it's going to be the exact same situation as this tier where you can kind of just play either of them and you're fine.
Yeah, I definitely agree. People really got to be careful with just looking at Assassination being up there when it's one of the few specs that actually sits on Dathia and on Diurna full time, while almost everybody else does not do damage to the boss there. So we're not even top 5 or barely top 5 on like raw boss damage. In a tier where there's like 2 bosses where 90% of the raid aren't even hitting the boss.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to try Assassination because they're going to assume it's a single target spec and then realize that they obliterated the spec from they shot it with a gun, and you just play the other 2 rogue specs.
One of the earlier questions.
The execute is mega OP. Then you play Assassination because it's not like it's like crazy worse. It's only like a little bit worse than Subtlety Outlaw, and it could be one of the situations where all the good rogue players are just playing sub and outlaw because they're just generally better, and then they don't even like a lot of the good players don't bother playing Assassination, so then its average is decreased. And execute on progs a little bit better. So I think all the rogue specs actually look pretty decently positioned, especially because the raid is all single target and all the rogue specs deal like the same single target damage.
Do you think the cloak from the last boss is a big deal with stealing stats and not having stam on it and all that?
Define big deal.
Like, do you think it's going to be 1, important having it, and 2, do you think it's a good design?
Okay, can you define important?
Oh my god, guy, please!
I need to know what terminology you're saying.
Is it gigadam or nah, bro?
Is it going to be gigadam? I mean, probably. It's free damage. Fuck them. Just take it from the healers, dog.
I mean, you can't choose though, right?
Yeah, but just take it from the healers. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's a silly. I think it's a dumb item. I think I know who's cooking these items up. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything, but some of the items he's cooking up, bro. Not a fan, but that's that's fine. What about you, Seli? What do you think, man?
I think if some of these items are turning out to be too annoying to play around or just too powerful to play around, there's going to be tuning anyway. We didn't have it this time around, but I think they kind of liked Grief Torch being as huge to even just the strategy in general on Razagath. But I think that all things considered, that if something turns out to be too good, then they'll just tune it. I think one thing that I'm very happy with, like just looking back to Vault as well, is that tuning came in very quick and very frequently. So it's rare for an outlier to persist throughout like the entirety of progression.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a stupid meme item, okay? That's all it is. Real talk.
Yeah, stupid meme item that's gonna be plus 2.5%. Hog.
Yeah, whatever, bro. People don't even augment rune, bro. You're telling me, dude, you don't need 2%, okay? You'll be fine.
Yeah.
But anytime I don't get a rank 1, I'm gonna blame it on my stats being stolen, though, straight up.
I mean, yeah, any excuse to, not parse.
Yeah, facts, bro. My stats didn't get stolen. The what's it called? The healers didn't use their simp buff on me properly, like with their new enchant, like their simp enchant. It just didn't. I didn't high roll. Like it's fine. It's just RNG.
Yeah. My trinket didn't proc, bro.
Yeah, my trinket didn't proc. Yeah, dude. My amulet didn't proc. Yeah, whatever, bro. That's life.
No grief torch reset for the ret wings. Bad kill time because the ret didn't get wings.
Facts.
I get it.
Facts.
Looking for another fun one that isn't just how is tuning.
Yeah, I don't know. I basically anybody listening is like we don't even have Sims yet, dog. So like we don't know. Like it could be literally that assassination is like turbo broken and Whispyr is a professional sandbagger. I have no idea. He could be. I could be sandbagging. Nobody actually knows who's sandbagging and who's not. It's kind of like Among Us. So we just kind of have to wait and see.
Yeah, dude, I'm out here.
The best. Come back in like a week and you'll figure it out.
You think I'm done in a week, dude?
Well, like in a week, we'll like have like the logs and we'll have like an idea, like a rough idea, right?
I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, do you think that's actually going to be somewhat impactful? The fact that this time around, like the patch is already going to be out prior to the raid opening, in terms of just getting a good baseline for tuning before the raid even opens up, or do you think that they won't be doing any tuning after the first week of the patch being out?
I mean, I hope that they tune more frequently.
I mean, I feel like they're okay. I think most of the buffs have been just not good, like this entire expansion so far. But I mean, like for the most part, for like the noobs and stuff, it's been like kind of fine, right? Like they keep buffing all the specs that are perceived as bad and whatever, and they keep they shuffle shit around a lot, right? So I can't imagine them changing it up from what they did this tier, right? Where they just constantly buffed and nerfed things, right?
Perhaps. All right, I'm gonna rapid fire some of these. Are you sad about the removed RP and freehold? Yes, no.
Wait, which RP was removed?
The one after first boss, where you have to like join a crew and you have to like talk to the dog and whatever.
What?
Yeah, they got rid of that.
Dude, that was like
That's
the
the only reason Guy was
dungeon.
ever invited to freehold, and now he has to actually farm Harlan's dice on like +5 keys.
Bro, are you kidding me? Bro.
I think it's fine because it was basically only 2 classes who could do it. It was either the Resto Druid if you had one, or it was the Rogue.
Okay, no, imagine this, okay?
Oh,
imagine
God.
we go back in time, okay? We go back in time, okay? Dragonflight Season 1 is announced. They say Court of Stars is in the dungeon pool. And they on the PTR say, we're making a big change, okay? There's going to be no RP in Court of Stars. And they get rid of all the buffs. Like, what's the point of the dungeon, bro?
It's not comparable though, right? Like it would be if they say, okay, we have something that's super broken that only 1 or 2 classes can do, so we're gonna get rid of it, which is exactly what they did in Court of Stars as well.
I can't think of a better comparison, and I'm not willing to listen to it. Any argument.
All right, and I'm not willing to listen to you spend another 5 minutes talking about a question, so we're gonna move on. What do you think about the boss design of the tier so far? Like, Rogue aside, all of that, whatever. Like, do you think the bosses are cool? Do you think the bosses are fun?
I have no idea because I've done like my guild does not do PTR testing.
Kind of based.
I don't know. I kind of like the problem is that so many like okay, like I said earlier on, where it was like Paintsmith melee used to get the axe, right? Um, which like if that happened on live, that would be like a totally different fight in terms of how I would evaluate it. So like just so many mechanics happen to melee where I'm just like melee should not be getting this. Like the laser beam on like one of those bosses. Like I don't know the bosses by name. Okay, I know them by concept. There's like a boss that has like a laser beam that shouldn't hit melee. There was like the Therian. Like melee should just get no mechanics on that boss straight up. Let me ignore everything. I like the wall boss. The wall boss was kind of cool. He was kind of vibey. I kind of like the vibe of the raid. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, because that was the question that I asked.
Yeah, the vibe is good. The vibes are immaculate. There you go. Is that a better answer? You want me to be less wordy? The vibes are good.
Good. That's perfect. Fantastic.
The one thing that I would say is that I wish they wouldn't go through like so many different styles of like the arenas and everything. Like you go from like a green area to like a orange/purplish area. I think if they would stick to like one or two major themes instead of going through like 5 different ones, that would be nicer. But overall, I think the raid is pretty cool because we're actually going like we don't really know many of the bosses in there, but at least from a story perspective, I know no one really cares about lore and stuff. But I think they're actually trying again with Dragonflight, and so far I'm kind of with positive feelings about it.
Hey, do not get it twisted. I am a lore frog, okay?
All right.
I'm not gonna dignify that with a response.
What the hell?
All right. Last one. I'm gonna go down the line, Guy. If you had to fix one thing about Outlaw, to make them feel better, not damage-wise, but just feel better, what are you fixing?
Fix Grand Melee.
Fix Grand Melee. How would you fix it?
I would literally make it do anything, because right now it does nothing. All Grand Melee does is give you slice and dice duration, which is fine. Like it can do that, but it needs to do something else. It like the fact that I go into Razageth, okay? I'm swinging at that boss, okay? I'm doing like season 3 damage on this boss because I hit skull, true bearing, like I'm going wacko cracko, okay? And then the next pull, I go Grand Melee. I have 8 minutes of slice and dice going into intermission 1. Like I'm not the button my spec is built around isn't giving me anything, okay? So Grand Melee, just make it give like attack speed. Like make it do something so that you give it something on top. Yeah, that's literally all I'm asking. Give it the slice and dice duration because pressing slice and dice sucks. I'm fine because like the count the odds, giving you a little bit of slice and dice duration is like nice. Like that is a nice quality of life feature. But the fact that it doesn't do anything at all really sucks because when you're 5 minutes into a 10-minute encounter and you have 13 minutes of slice and dice left, it's just like what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Make it give like attack speed or energy cost reduction or anything. Flat damage. Give me something, man.
All right. Seli, if you had to change one thing about assassination, what are you changing?
Oh God.
Just one.
Yeah, it's like your mom taking you to the ice cream stand, right? And there's like 20 different flavors, and she's gonna tell you you can only pick one.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then
goddamn right.
You just can't choose.
And you're not even getting a waffle cone. You're getting it in a cup
yeah,
with a little tiny plastic spoon, and that's all you get.
No, it's a wooden spoon with splinters.
Let me think. Bone Spike. Do something with Bone Spike. I want that talent back because I like having a low cost combo point builder that might actually be pretty decent in cleave and AoE environments. And the position it has right now is god awful. I don't know why cleave/AoE talent is behind Doomblade. That makes very little to no sense to me. And it's basically you're not able to pick it unless you're sacrificing Shrouded Suffocation. And when are you ever gonna do that? In a Mythic Plus setting, right? Like there's just no way. You don't have the points for it. So it's kind of a dead talent simply because of its position on the tree. And if they could just move it somewhere else, that would be stonks.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then Whispyr, what would you do about sub? Take the generator damage out of the goddamn spec. Please. I don't want Gloomblade doing half my damage, bro.
But it's a spec that already boosts its finisher damage with the mastery. Obviously, it makes sense to have builder damage be the rest of the talents.
It's so cringe.
Like I adamantly dislike subtlety currently. I didn't mind it in Sepulchre and shit, but I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me that you have this spec that has a mastery of finisher damage, and then you have all these like damage modifiers and like damage windows and blah blah, and then your highest damage is like Gloomblade Rupture. Like, why though?
Here I'm gonna say some wild shit. If Eviscerate hit like a truck, right? Like if Eviscerate was like arcane major levels of dumb, right? Where it like one tapped bosses, you can have Rupture, right? Like if Eviscerate hits that hard, then Rupture can be stronger than Assassinations. I don't care anymore. Like just make it do a big boom, and I will be happy. I will love the spec again. I'm okay with that one.
Here's what they need to do, okay? So, okay, let me spitball some ideas, okay? And let me tell you what you guys think, okay? All right. And this will be the last question, okay? Let me cook for a second. All right. So instead of Sub Rogue having 7 combo points, okay, we make it so it only has 5 combo points, right? Let's make it so that the finisher costs maybe 4, 4 to spend, right? We give it like a really strong, like 1 minute or make it like 2-minute baseline, and then there's a talent that makes it 1. Like make it a cracked cooldown. Like make it give like mastery, maybe some versatility, and then just like flat damage, like flat global 30% damage increase, right? And then you give it this cooldown. We'll call it like we'll rework Symbols of Death, right? Where basically you have this 9-second window where you build up damage and it explodes and hit the target. That would be a cool subtlety rogue thing. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's either flag or it's soul cap.
No, I'm alluding to just make sub rogue Ret Paladin.
So we're going to make so here's the thing, yeah. So if you make sub Ret Paladin and if you make Assassination, Feral, or Shadow Priest, what are we gonna make Outlaw?
Outlaw is perfect. There's nothing wrong with Outlaw, so it doesn't need any changes.
So please, everybody, listen to what Guy just said, because this will be an incredibly useful quote for like this next 6 to 9 months of the tuning.
Bro, Outlaw, the only problem Outlaw ever has
Guy
is
2023
numerics. The way the spec plays is lit. But no, my problem with Sub Rogue is it just doesn't feel like Sub Rogue. Like when I played Ret Paladin, bro, it felt like I was pressing, dude. I was swinging. Fucking Templar's Verdict, and like monsters would explode, and my final verdict would smash the monster in half. Like, dude, when I play Sub Rogue, I press Eviscerate, it does like 2% of the mob's life. It doesn't make any sense. Like I don't know, bro. I want to do crazy high damage. That's what I want to do. When I press Eviscerate, I want the boss to explode. Okay, and the game doesn't let me do that.
Yeah, kind of true. All right, anyways, thanks guys for coming. I hope you guys had fun. Fun as usual.
It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. We're gonna try and do more of these, right? Seli's not gonna be caught up in Raider.io garbage, and Guy's gonna be talking and like,
I'm not talking, I'm speaking.
Okay. Are you speaking or are you spitting facts?
But spitting facts, spitting rhymes, limericks, I do it all. I do the most.
All right. I'm just gonna gotta go. All right, bye guys.
But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And see you next time.
Like I said, it's always a pleasure.